for systems that there is no support for.
Okay. So you mentioned this company, Murdaugh, which does produce a commercially available software that can extract data from some vehicles, correct?
Some vehicles, yes.
But it does not support the 2021 Chevrolet Suburban, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And that's how the device ended up with you, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So I kind of stopped you there. And if a software solution isn't available, like Murdaugh, what are some of the other methods that you use to pull data off of some of these automotive systems?
I mentioned such as attaching wires to a circuit board and extracting data from the memory component, or also removing the chip from the board and putting it in a reader and reading the chip, the flash memory chip directly.
Okay. All right. Let's talk more about what you did in this case. When you attempted to access the data for the 2021 Suburban, did you encounter any problems?
Yes, we ran into our first instance of data being encrypted on a vehicle.
Okay. And that's not something you'd run into before?
Not on vehicles.
Okay. And briefly, explain to the jury what you mean by encrypted, please.
So when a system encrypts the data, it takes basically a code word such as called a key and scrambles the data using that key so that it can't be written unless you have that key. And the key will, to read it back, you require the key to unlock the data and see it back in its regular form.
Okay. And you discovered this data on this Chevy Suburban was encrypted, correct?
That's correct.
All right. I'm going to show you, they've been marked for ID only, 448 and 447. And I'm going to take a look at them and see if you recognize these items, please.
This is the OnStar module that I processed. And this is the infotainment system that I processed for the Suburban.
How do you know those are the units you processed?
We have an FBI identifier tag on here, and my personal identifier symbols are on here
And that's on both of those devices?
on both units.
All right. At this time, state would move to enter exhibits 447 and 448 into evidence.
No objection. Yeah, all right, get it.
All right, so let's talk about, you say when you initially tried to access the data on these, they were encrypted. Can you tell us what the FBI did or what you did to ultimately allow you to be able to access the information?
Involved our greater team to develop a tool that would be able to reach into a live system on one of these vehicles and extract the encryption keys and remove get the encryption keys so then we could decrypt the data that we had collected.
Okay, and was that process ultimately successful?
Yes, it was.
And how long did that take?
Approximately 1 year.
Okay, all right. All right, and when you access this information and you finally had it decrypted, what types of information did you find? Let's start on the infotainment center. What types of information did you find on there?
So the infotainment center contained connected devices, phones that have been linked by Bluetooth or USB, and associated with some of those devices were call logs and contact lists. And there was also a little bit of location data.
Okay. So you found some call logs, correct?
That's correct.
And how would that infotainment center get call logs? Explain that process. Why would they be on that center?
So a lot of cars that have Bluetooth connectivity will, when you connect the Bluetooth with them, sometimes they will ask you if you want to let the car connect to it or access your data on your phone. Sometimes it doesn't ask, but in most cases it'll ask you, and then at that point it'll take things like call logs and pull them from the phone into the computer, the infotainment system.
Okay. All right, and you found some call logs on this infotainment center, right? Correct?
Yes,
You found some location data, correct?
that's correct.
Do you recall if you found any from the date of June 7th of 2021?
Yes, there was data from that date.
Location data?
Oh, location data, no.
Okay.
They got call data.
All right, you found some call data, you found some Bluetooth data. And what kind of Bluetooth data did you find for devices did you find?
It primarily the Bluetooth address of the connecting device.
Did it provide you any information of when a device may have been connected to the infotainment center?
No, there was no timestamps with that data.
Okay. All right, but there's another thing, another type of data you found on this infotainment center, correct?
Yes, we additionally looked for vehicle information regarding the state of the vehicle.
Okay, explain to the jury, what does that mean?
So what we were looking for on this car was something to show if the car was moving, if doors were opened or closed, windows up and down. We searched for this type of data on this vehicle.
Okay. And did you find some of that data?
We did. We found what we call states of the vehicle. And in this case, it was more granular things such as, and one of the ones we're interested in looking at is the shift lever going in and out of park, kind of giving an indication.
And we'll talk more about that in a minute, but
Okay.
Would you say that there is a lot of this vehicle status data that was
Yes,
stored?
this vehicle stores a voluminous amount of data in some logs.
And is the majority of it really useful when you
No.
try to okay. Did you attempt to pare down the data you're looking at to find potentially useful information?
Yes, we combed through the data and we looked for data that matched our testing of a similar vehicle or identical type vehicle to be able to identify messages in this log that can be attributed to the vehicle states.
Well, let's talk about that. You mentioned it. You said testing. What do you mean by testing? What did you guys do to test this?
We obtained a identical 2021 Suburban vehicle with the same build out.
Okay.
And we drove it multiple times and extracted data from it multiple times in a series of tests designed to try to understand what is going on inside the system.
Okay. So this is simple testing. So you go out and drive it and you'd record, you knew when you're driving, so you could record times,
We
correct?
record times, locations, yes,
And then you could go back in and pull that data off the infotainment center of the test vehicle, correct?
that's correct.
And then you can compare that to the logs that you guys wrote saying we did this at this time, correct?
That's correct.
And you what could you do with that comparison? What did that help you with?
So that helped us identify in the logs laid out states, very granular states of.
When you say
system.
granular, and I apologize when I stop you, but I want to make sure, we understand everything you're saying. When you say granular, what do you mean by that?
I'll explain a few of the states to give you an example.
Okay.
When the vehicle first, say you open the door and you see the screen turn on the car, that would be maybe one or two of the states that the system tells me it's waking up, a message saying it's waking up, then a message saying I'm showing my animation video on the screen as it starts to boot up. And then eventually, like if the car is being, and then other states of the car, such as the in and out of park, a lot of the states only mean something very small in the whole scheme of how the car is operating, a very specific little pieces of data.
Okay. And there's a lot of it, correct?
There's a lot of them.
And so you had to kind of figure out a way to kind of pare that data down into something that's useful for you to interpret, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And how did you do that?
Initially, we wrote a utility into our parser that would go through, first of all, and select all the messages we found of interest that indicated some sort of state of the vehicle. And then we attempted to take that data and put meaning to it. And it was a challenging process, let's put it that way.
Okay. But ultimately, do you feel like, at least for certain types of events, you're able to draw some conclusions about what was going on with the vehicle at certain times?
Certain events were much more specific about certain of the things that were going on with the car,
Okay.
and were clearer.
And when you were asked, the question of, can you use any of this information to determine when a vehicle could potentially be moving? Is that? something that you looked for in this data?
We were looking for that data. We found something close to that data.
Okay. And in your testing and analysis, what did you determine would be the best indicator to you, looking at the data, of when the vehicle is moving?
The message indicating whether the car was in park or out of park.
Okay. And so you found a reliable indicator in your opinion, indicates the vehicle would likely or possibly be moving, correct?
That's correct.
Now, all you said was this particular message says it's either in park or out of park, correct?
That's all it says.
And it doesn't necessarily say whether it's in drive, correct?
That's right. I don't know what gear it's in.
Okay. But you can tell when it's out of park.
Correct.
And can you tell from that whether the vehicle is actually physically moving?
I cannot.
Okay. I am. And at the end of this analysis, did you prepare data and a parser report to send to SLED at the end of your analysis?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibit 443. I'm going to see if you recognize that.
Yes, this is a copy that I validated earlier today against the original evidence that was submitted.
So that contains the information you provided SLED, correct?
That's correct.
And generally speaking, what is contained on this CD?
It is the our unit's derivative evidence results of what was extracted and reported for both the OnStar module and the infotainment system.
Okay. All right. And so this provides both, we said there's voluminous raw data that came out of this vehicle, correct?
Yes,
And it includes a full copy of that, right?
there is.
But also includes a report that kind of pares that down into more useful information to you, correct?
Yes,
And what did you call that report again? Was it the HTML report?
the format was in HTML, so you could open it with a browser.
And
Yes.
what tool did you use to help you prepare that condensed report?
That was the parsing tool that developed that.
And that's what you talked to about at the beginning of your testimony with the jury. And that's a way to use software to help pare down the data into something useful.
Correct.
Okay. All right. At this time, state would move to enter exhibit 443.
No objection. Submitted.
I'm going to show you it's been marked as exhibit 449. And just describe what that is to the jury, please.
Okay, this is a spreadsheet that basically shows many of the states of the vehicle that we were looking at in testing the test and running our tests on the test vehicle. This is an analysis of the states that were on there, and this is what we were using to develop the understanding of what these states meant.
Okay. And so what would be a shorter way to describe that, or a more simple way to describe that?
It's an analysis of the state machine,
Would
of
it
the state
be,
vehicle states.
okay, this would represent some of the research that you and your team.
That is research. Yeah, that's a research document.
Okay. At this time, state would move exhibit 449.
No objection. Submitted.
All right. And we talked about call logs, and you found some call logs, correct?
Yes,
On this vehicle. And where did those call logs come from again?
they were stored within the infotainment system
And where did the infotainment system get them?
from an attached phone.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to show you what's been marked as states 446. And let me see if you recognize that document and where it's from.
Yes, these were call logs that we recovered off the infotainment system.
Okay. And those are two specific calls, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And what are the date and time of those two calls?
The first one, June 7th, 2021 at 22:06:14,
And what was the number dialed on that one?
9111.
Okay, 3 ones. Okay.
And then another one shortly thereafter at 220618 a couple seconds later for just 911.
And in your research and testing, can you determine of when these call logs would have been pulled off the phone that made these calls?
No, at some point, the system would have downloaded that information from the phone. I don't know what time that occurred.
Okay, all right. And at this time, I would move Exhibit 446.
No objection. So admitted.
All right.
I actually think that first call helped show
And I'm going to show you.
that he was nervous or panicked because he accidentally dialed 9111.
And this is Exhibit 442, and I'm going to ask if you recognize this document.
Yes.
And what is that document?
I've titled this document the 2021 Chevy Suburban log file excerpts from June 7th, 2021.
All right. And is this a condensed version of data from that original, that CD that we showed you a minute ago?
Yes.
Okay. And what is that condensed to? Why did you condense it to that particular data for this particular printout?
This spreadsheet was the data that our parsing tool was looking for amongst all the log files and extracting those out.
We talked about this a minute ago, but if you're trying to determine when this vehicle moved, you identified a key indicator. When the vehicle may have possibly moved, you identified a key indicator in that data that would indicate to you, in your opinion, that the vehicle could have possibly been moving, correct?
That's correct. In or out of park.
Okay. And when you produced that report, did you color code certain columns?
Yes, I hand colored the columns on here that indicated those for clarity.
And I think I meant to say rows because they're horizontal.
They're rows,
correct?
yes.
My apologies. And you color coded certain ones, right?
That's correct.
Okay. At this time, state we move to enter Exhibit 442.
No objection. It's admitted.
We're going to publish this. And I'll need the computer, please. No. It's got to boot up. My apologies.
Me too.
Okay. So we'll keep moving. I'm going to need that exhibit back, please. And we're going to switch to Elmo. Once we get the computer going, it'll give a better view, but for the moment, we'll look at the Elmo. Okay. Can you read that document on your screen?
I think I could read that.
Okay. So let's just start at the top. And I think you read the title, it was 2021 Chevy Suburban log files, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And then we see a row below that that looks like descriptors, correct?
Correct.
All right. Well, let's just start on the left. Let's explain what these mean. And we see on the far left, it says line and then a number symbol or hashtag. What does that mean?
Okay, I'm going to explain that using the next column over file name first. The file name indicates the particular log file that the data was recovered from. There was numbered log files in the system. And for this date, there were 2 different log files that contain this data. And the line number indicates the physical or the actual line number starting from 1 at the top that data was located on.
Okay. And then we see the date next to that. And what is that again? Specifically, that date and time?
That is the timestamp of the actual log entry.
All right. Let's switch to the computer, please. And this will make this a little bit easier to see, hopefully. Oh, if I can get to Okay, and I think I'm at the top. All right, can you still, is that a little better for you to see? Mr.
I can see it fine.
Okay. All right, it looks like somehow I managed to mess up the spreadsheet. My apologies. All right, so event type. What does event type mean?
Basically, the event type is a part of the log entry that describes what sort of event is going on. It describes the event.
Okay. Event description, what does that mean?
It's just a longer, more verbose version of the event type.
An event value, what does that mean?
That is the actual value of the event rather than this is the event and this is what its value is.
Okay. When you say value, what do you mean by that?
It can be a 1, a 0, a true, a false, or a textual indicator of the system state.
All right. And you say 1 or 0, true or false. You mentioned a while ago that data is always binary, right?
Yes,
And binary is always 1 or 0, correct?
in case a lot of these are 1 and 0.
Okay. And that's how data is typically stored in computer systems,
Typically,
correct?
yeah.
Okay. All right. So finally, on the far right, it says raw line from service log file. What does that mean?
That is actual line from the file copied verbatim.
Okay. And so that's the actual data log that you pulled out of the system.
That is correct.
And it includes a timestamp as well, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so let's just look at the top here. And you said you added in some color coding, correct?
That's correct.
And the top line appears to be red. That's 83, 84, correct?
Yes,
And 86, 76 is also red, correct?
that's correct.
All right. Why did you color code those red? What is that?
Those were basically messages that were showing the system starting up. The computer for the infotainment system initiated a boot sequence.
All right. And did your testing identify a number of ways the system on this vehicle could start up?
We observed it starting up with several ways.
Okay.
I don't think we know all the ways it may start up.
Okay. Well, what are some of the ways you observed that it could start up?
Things such as opening the door of the vehicle or getting the vehicle, turning it on.
Okay. And when we say system startup, we mean the infotainment center.
This is referring to the infotainment center, not the whole vehicle.
Okay. So it's not necessarily we're turning the vehicle on every time we see a red color there.
That's correct. Just the infotainment
It
system.
could be someone just opening the door, correct?
Yep.
And that represents, in some cases, where the screen in that car just kind of lights up if the door opens or for another reason, correct?
That would be an indicator, yes.
And are there certain occasions where the system can kind of start up on its own?
There's some unexplained times when the system seems to initiate a boot for no apparent reason. It's theoretical on what the car is doing at that point.
Okay. All right. And then below that, at line 9142 and 9144, it looks like you color coded those two lines as blue, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And why did you color code those lines as blue?
Those indicated these vehicle parked message that we found to be very useful in determining potentially the car moving.
Okay. And this is something that you found in your testing and analysis, correct?
That's correct.
That was reliable?
This is a reliable message.
All right. And it reliably means what?
Reliably tells you whether the car was shifted into park or shifted out of park.
Okay. All right. And looks like lines 9142 and 9144 both occurred at 12/21/43 on June 7th of 2021. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. And is that local time?
That is local time.
All right. And what does that mean? What does vehicle parked true mean?
Vehicle park true means the shift lever of the vehicle was placed into the park position.
Okay. So the vehicle was shifted into park.
That's correct.
All right. But I see it looks like the exact same message on both lines, correct?
That's correct.
Why do we have the exact same message on both lines?
If you take a look, scroll to the right on the one that's showing the raw values, you'll see that the messages are not identical. They're from two pieces of the subsystem reporting the same event.
Okay. So this particular log and maybe some other ones get recorded in different places on this infotainment center.
There's a lot of duplication of messages.
Okay. And they don't, if they have the same timestamp, how would you interpret that if you see duplicate messages with the exact same timestamp?
I would typically consider that just a single event.
Okay, and so let's look down below that, and I see multiple things happening, and I'm highlighting it, on lines 9148 to 9156 at 12:33 and 23 seconds. And I see a number of things happen there with the same timestamp, correct?
That's correct.
And in your analysis, in your opinion, when you see a group of messages happening at the same time, what's the best way to interpret that information?
You have to kind of take a look at them as an aggregate.
Okay. And so you kind of look at all these messages as a whole to interpret what they mean, correct?
That's correct.
Rather than each one individually.
That's correct.
Okay. So let's look at it. Looking at lines 9148 and all those lines that are timestamped identically, which goes down to line 9159, what does that group of messages, in your opinion, mean was happening on this vehicle at that time on June 7th of 2021?
It looked like the infotainment computer was beginning a power down sequence.
Okay. Okay, and we go down to 1242, and we see a few lines in 9167, 9459, and 9716. We see a few of those red color-coded lines, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and again, what does that mean? Why are those coded that way?
The infotainment system initiated a boot up sequence starting up.
Okay, but any number of reasons of why that would have potentially booted up at that time?
Yeah, it could be a number of reasons.
Okay. All right, but then at 9954 and 9956, we see some blue color-coded messages, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and what do those mean? It says vehicle parked false. What does that mean?
Vehicle parked false means this car was shifted out of park.
Okay, and that's at what time?
18:23:57.
All right, help us out. What's that in civilian time?
6:23:57
PM?
p.m.
On what day?
on June 7th, 2021.
And again, we see two identical messages, correct?
Yes.
But you would interpret that as one event, correct?
Yes.
And what is that event again?
It's a vehicle taken out of park.
Okay. Okay, and we see a few things happen. Looks like 1853 and 1911. Some of those red color coded. What's your interpretation for lines? Looks like 396 and 984 on June 7th. There, what's going on in those lines?
It's another infotainment system boot up startup sequence.
Okay, and then we see another red event at 2103:44, correct?
Yes.
And what is that?
Another boot up sequence.
Okay, and from any number of reasons, correct?
Correct.
Could be if someone just opened the car door, correct?
Yes.
And then we see a group of messages. Looks like a few at 2104:05, and then a few at 2104:18. Quite a few more at 2104:18, and that's 9:04 p.m. Correct?
That is correct.
All right, and that group of messages at 9:04:18 p.m. What in the aggregate? What is that telling you is going on with this vehicle at that time?
One moment.
I have the times highlighted there.
Yeah, at the 2104:18, those ones looked like the system was, but prior to that, it seemed to be shutting down, and then it stopped and started coming back up.
Okay. And so it seems to be starting up around 2104:18, correct?
Yes.
And that'd be consistent with that red coded message we saw a second ago, correct?
Yes.
And it's also consistent with the red coded message at line 1281 at 2105:56, correct?
What do you mean by consistent with that message?
I'm sorry. Take a look at line 1281. See that?
Yes, I see 1281. That's the next system startup message.
Okay. And what time is that again?
2105:56.
All right. And I'm going to do my best, and I'll try to stop you. Let's try to talk in local time.
Okay,
Or
yeah.
civilian time, excuse me.
I'll start processing it that way.
And I make that mistake too. What time is that in civilian time?
That would be 9:05:56
PM
p.m.
on June 7th?
on June 7th,
2021? Okay.
2021.
Okay, and then below that, we see a group of messages starting at line 1557, and they have an identical time state of what?
9:06 and 44 seconds.
Okay. PM?
PM.
All right. And what is that group of messages telling you at that time?
That looks like the vehicle system is continuing its power up process.
Okay. All right. And then we see a series of messages that all occur within 2 or 3 seconds, starting at line 1591 at 9:06:48 p.m., and then continuing on through 9:06:49 p.m., and quite a few at 9:06:49 p.m., and then into 9:06:50 p.m., and that's lines roughly 1628 down to 1654. What does that group of messages tell you is occurring?
So at that point, partway through those message sets, it actually has an engine running event. So the car has been turned on.
Okay, so in your opinion, the vehicle is running at approximately 9:06:49 to 9:06:50 p.m.?
Yes.
Okay, on June 7th?
Yes.
All right, and then we see at line 1670 and 1672, it looks like another couple of blue-colored messages, correct?
Yes.
And again, what are those blue-colored messages? What do they indicate to you?
The vehicle park message.
All right, and it says vehicle park false. What does that mean?
The vehicle was taken out of park.
Okay, the vehicle was taken out of park at 9:06 and 50 seconds, correct? PM?
Correct.
All right. On June 7th, correct?
Correct.
All right, and if we look at it on line 1672, the timestamp has a slightly different color stamp. I don't know if is that viewable on your screen? Yeah. It looks like it's colored more green, correct?
That is correct.
Why did you color that particular block green at line 1672?
I was highlighting events where you could see where the vehicle was taken out of park, and it looks like it was continually used and then put back into park.
Okay. And so, first of all, those two lines at 1670 and 1672, they represent the same event?
They are the same event.
Okay. And that's the vehicle taken out of park, correct?
That's correct.
And you color coded that green because you wanted to find when the vehicle was put back into park, correct?
Correct. I want to find, yes,
Okay. Because you, in your opinion and your analysis, you've determined that that message is pretty reliable and something we can rely upon to make a determination of when that vehicle could have been moving, correct?
correct.
Okay, so 9:06:50 p.m., the vehicle is taken out of park. And then let's go down the line, 1904, 1904, and we see another green stamp embedded in a blue line. Do you see that, sir?
Yes.
And what does that mean to you?
Well, it was the next event where the vehicle went back into park
Okay. So at what time is that?
at 9:22 and 45 seconds p.m.
Vehicle's put back into park, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And in your opinion, could the vehicle have been moving between those two times?
Yes, it could have. I have no evidence of that.
Okay. All right. But the vehicle's out of park for that?
It is out of park.
Okay. And that's something, in your opinion, we can rely upon, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And roughly, I'm not going to ask you for exact seconds, roughly how much time passes between the vehicle taking out of park at line 1672 and put back into park at line 1904?
Approximately 16 minutes.
Okay. All right, and I'm going to scroll down. And I'm scroll down to line 3059 and 3061. And I see some more green colored blocks here, correct?
Yes.
All right. And what are those blocks? What information is contained in those blocks? What messages?
Again, it's the vehicle in or out of park messages.
Okay. And so, and what time is that? Those two messages at 3061?
3061 shows 9:43:05
PM?
PM,
And that's June 7th,
June
correct?
7th, 2021.
And
And
what-
then
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but at that particular event, what happens with the vehicle?
the vehicle goes out of park.
Okay. And then the next line below that, what's the time on that, the date time on that?
9:43 and 59 seconds, June 7th, 2021. That's PM.
Okay. And what happens with the vehicle?
It goes back into park.
Okay. And so roughly how much time passed between those two events?
It looks like just under a minute.
Okay. And you can't tell us whether the vehicle actually moved during that time, correct?
No.
All right. All you can tell us was it was out of park for a little under a minute.
Yes.
All right, and not to put you on the spot, we'll go back up and look real quick. So that's at 9:43:05 PM, correct?
Correct.
Let's go back and look at the previous vehicle parked at 9:22:45 PM, and that's line 1904. That's when the vehicle had been placed in the park, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and let's just do some rough math. Do you have a pen and you can write it down if you need to? 9:22:45, the vehicle's in park.
Okay.
9:43:05, the vehicle is now back out of park, correct?
That's correct.
Roughly how much time passes between those two events?
Approximately 21 minutes.
All right, and so the vehicle is out of park for about a minute at lines 3061 and 3079. And then let's scroll down to line 3096 and 3310. What happens with the vehicle there?
The vehicle goes out of park
Okay, at what time?
at 9:44:54 seconds on June 7th, 2021. That's PM.
Okay, and then the next event below that, what occurs there?
Next event is the vehicle goes back into park at, that would be 10 o'clock and 36 seconds
Okay,
on June 7th, 2021 PM.
and those are color coded green because they kind of represent a matching pair, correct?
That's correct.
Of when it went out and when it went back into park, correct?
That's correct.
Bro, can we get a
And
visual?
roughly, how much time passes between those two events at 9:44 and 10 o'clock of the night of June 7th?
Approximately 16 minutes.
Okay. All right, and then let's go down to lines 3327 and 3328. And those are two more green colored events that represent that matching pair, correct?
That's correct.
Vehicle out of park and the vehicle in park, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and what are the times associated with those two events?
The vehicle goes out of park at 10:01 and 17 seconds on June 7th, 2021. It's PM. And it goes back into park at 10:01, 29 seconds on June 7th, 2021
Okay,
PM.
and roughly speaking, how many seconds is that?
About 12 seconds.
Okay. Okay, let's go to just a few seconds later, lines 3336 and 3340. And we see another matching pair of these green messages, correct?
That's correct.
Out of park and then back into park, correct?
That's correct.
And what are the two times on that particular event?
The vehicle goes out of park at 10:01 and 30 seconds on June 7th, 2021. That's PM. And it goes back into park at 10:01 and 43 seconds, June 7th.
So maybe I can do the math this time. That's roughly about 13 seconds it's out of park.
That's correct.
Okay, and we see a whole bunch of messages again, that group of messages starting at 22:04:44 and kind of going on until 10:04:44 p.m. and 10:04:47 p.m. We see another group of messages what does that group of messages generally indicate to you in the aggregate? And that's this group I'll highlight.
Clearly not.
3 to 2, didn't run false. It looks like the system is powering down.
Okay. Okay, and then we get down to lines 34, 64, and that shows another green color-coded pair of messages, correct?
That's correct.
And again, goes out of park and back into park, correct?
That's correct.
And what are the two times associated with those two messages at 36, 64 and 36, 82?
Yes.
I'm sorry, what
What's
are
the
those
question?
times?
What are the times? 10:04 and 49, it goes out of park. That's PM on June 7th, 2021. And it goes back into park at 10:05, 55 seconds PM, June 7th, 2021.
And that's roughly more than a minute, correct?
That's correct.
And then let's go down to lines 3490 and 3504. And we see another matching pair in out of park and then into park, correct?
That's correct.
And what are the times associated with those two?
The vehicle goes out of park at 10:11 and 45 seconds on June 7th, 2021 PM. And then it goes back into park at 10:12 and 38 seconds PM, June 7th, 2021.
Okay. All right. And that's roughly just under a minute or so?
That's correct.
And we're almost to the end here. Okay. And then we see another message. So first of all, we see some messages that are blue colored at 3506 through 3515. And why are those blue coded instead of green coded for you?
Those are more vehicle park messages, but they appear to be with the, basically duplications of the existing ones.
So that's just duplicate information, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And then finally, at line 3521, we see the vehicle. What happens with the vehicle at that line?
Okay, it goes out of park at 10:13 and 39 seconds PM on June 7th, 2021.
Did you find a matching kind of pair as we've talked about for when the vehicle goes back in the park?
No.
All right.
No log message was present for that.
Okay. Can you explain why that log message may not be present?
We found during the testing of our test vehicle that there are times when the system decides to temporarily stop recording message. The reason is not clear.
Okay. But you do see it come out of park at 10:13:39, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Now, and just to reiterate this, you're just telling us when this vehicle's in and out of park, correct?
That's correct.
Because that's the most reliable piece of information you've been able to deem from this data, correct?
That's correct.
And you can't tell us necessarily where the vehicle's moving, correct?
That's correct.
And you can't tell us if it's moving, or if you see it go out of park, who's shifting the actual gear knob, can you?
No, we don't know who's in the car.
And all you can look at is this particular data, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And just so it's clear, you've determined, you're interpreting this data because you use a test vehicle to see when you see these messages, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And that's why you're giving us these opinions today, correct? From
That's
your
correct.
testing. All right. And when you were using your test vehicle, if you took a vehicle, if you took the vehicle out and drove it, took it out of park, drove it, and then put it back in the park, would you find that exact same matching pair of in and out of park messages we just talked through? Correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you weren't able to determine any other data that would reliably tell you if it was moving or not, correct?
That's correct.
All right. But, so if the vehicle's driving and you see that, you would see that in identical pair messages like we just talked about.
Yes.
And however, if the car's just stopped and someone shifts it out of park and just sits there with their foot on the brake, and then sometime later puts it back into park, would you see that same matching pair of in park, out of park message and back in the park message?
Yes.
You would, okay. All right. Not for mistake, this witness.
By the defense.
We didn't even hit the key points before they got done with him because that was kerbobbled as fuck.
Stand for a moment.
The car allegedly started and stopped multiple times. That was, oof. Yeah, let's take a standard.
Right, back in order.
Do you have the address for the parents' house? Do you have the address of the parents' house?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Hopefully this won't take long, just a few clarifying questions. First, you mentioned that the data was encrypted.
Yes, when we pulled the data off the chip, it was encrypted.
Is this something that's the manufacturer did?
Yes.
It's not something that the end user doesn't do something to encrypt the data. It comes that way.
Not for the infotainment system, no.
And so it sounded like you kind of had to reverse engineer with a test vehicle to figure out
I'm going to remain standing
media
for
stuff.
this one.
Were you not able to get General Motors to assist with that?
We could, but we generally try to find the data on our own. Often we have it's difficult for us to get the manufacturers to work with us on that data.
Did anyone attempt to reach out to General Motors, say to de-encrypt the data?
Not from EDAU.
I won't go over this spreadsheet too much. You still have the exhibit with you?
I have a copy.
Okay. And we didn't have a.
Where's Megan with the Depp coffer joke on that one?
Laptop, yes.
Is it up?
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you just briefly about, if I can find it on this. There were some things that were happening at 903, 2103. Here, let me do it. I've got my phone on that. 904. I didn't quite understand. What do these mean? This group of things that say info state, sleep, and state, some abbreviation, animate, all these things happening in this 904, 905 range. What does that mean?
So as I was attempting to explain before, that some of these messages, like individually, they don't mean a whole lot. Like, what does this actually mean? But in this case, it's generally showing. Like, could you scroll down just a little bit more so I could see a few more of the messages? So it looks like initially, like at line number 984, where the system initially boots up, and then at 904.
Well, let me stop you there.
I'm
When
sorry.
you say system startup, what does that mean? What is the system? What is it doing when it starts up?
So this is just the computer for the infotainment center. This is not the entire vehicle, but something woke up that system. And just like your home computer, it needs to boot up before Windows is ready. That's a similar thing that has a boot up sequence. This is a log that says that was initiated.
Okay. And what would trigger this? What would make this startup happen?
We know that some events that make it happen, such as opening the door or just starting the car, we don't know all the events that might make that happen.
Well, on my Chevy, if you walk near it with the key fob, the lights come on the little door handles. You can stick your foot under the rear and the rear will come up. Would walking near it with the key fob trigger anything?
It's a possibility, but we did not investigate that.
But scrolling down here to 906 and 48 seconds, am I reading this correctly to say that the engine was turned on?
Can you scroll down just a little bit further?
Why would you not test
You go
that?
just a little bit more into the 49 second. So if you see that there was at one point, there was messages such engine run false, which is only within the same second as a following up on engine running true. It's messages like this that get a little bit confusing on there, but ultimately it's basically saying, here I'm at, but I'm moving to this state here. So in that case, it looked like the engine started running at this time.
Okay.
Why would you not look into that?
Well, I don't think I'll belabor this spreadsheet anymore, but I did want to ask, did you additionally retrieve data related to the phone connecting to the entertainment system? I think there was a 911 call that you.
We had a call log that was extracted, as well as the connection of a Bluetooth or several Bluetooth devices.
Such
I'm going
as,
to hand you a printout. Is this a printout of device connection history that you were able to obtain from the vehicle?
it sounds pretty consistent with what Alex said. That's how I took it. Now, there's a lot of startup and stop, and I'm a visual person, so I'm going to have to make a chart for the members later, because I know y'all are just as fucking confused. So I'm going to make a chart of these times and put it online for the members later. But from what I picked up on so far, it does sound somewhat consistent with what Alex said.
We need to go back to the original material and take a look at this, because some of this looks more than like what we originally collected. There's pages of this here.
Come again?
Right, it goes back way outside of the sort of time frame, but that's. I mean, can you identify this?
I mean, the format looks familiar, but it looks, I might have to go back into the original material and pull up the HTML report. Is that acceptable?
Absolutely.
Oh, we're going to have to make a charty chart because I'm visual. This is bullshit.
Your Honor, I think the witness is asking to look at
We
his
need to
original
talk
data
about
to validate what Mr. Barber has. State has no objection to that. We'll just need a few minutes for him to validate it.
No objection, Your Honor. Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll have you go to the jury room for a short break, hopefully.
We're gonna work on it. We're gonna work on a chart. I mean, I wrote down all the times, but the mods and I shall work on a chart later because that was between the line numbers. You know, like go to line 99, 54, 56, and then at 06, 23, 57, it's like, come on. Also, wouldn't it have been easier to say at 10:01 and 17 seconds, the car was perhaps put out of park, and then about 12 seconds later at 10:01:29, it was perhaps back in park instead of how many seconds is that? Roughly 12. I mean, you're like intentionally trying to make the math not math with how they ask that. Oof. It does not seem to be cohesive. I mean, we could have at least honed in on key times and pointed it out. Like, if, for example, prosecution, because they're the one that did that kerbobbled shit, maybe you say Alec Murdaugh alleged that he left his house at 9:06 p.m. on the night of the double homicides, and it's saying that his car did in fact or did not in fact come out of park at this time and was driving for this amount of time, which does or does not equate to the amount of time it would take to get to the destination in which he said he was at. I mean, some context behind the numbers would help. I mean, I get the obvious is that he said he left at this time and he went. I mean, I get that, but it doesn't hurt to reiterate some of this shit. I mean, Lord have mercy.
Maybe he's just a bad guy. Maybe he murdered them because he's just a bad guy. And that's something that our system tries very hard.
Yeah, we're muting you until they come back on. And like, what are we taking another break for? They are all over the place with this trial. There's not a linear path here, and they're not staying on topics, and there's not a cohesive story or timeline being put out. They're not solidifying timelines or key points or key elements that they think do not match or match. I mean, the prosecution is throwing all this stuff out there, but they're not saying how it contradicts their version of events. For example, we've talked about this car coming on and off. Would it not make more sense to point out which of these time frames the prosecution alleges do not work in the defense's favor? Instead of going through every single thing, like, let's talk about the defense says this, the prosecution believes this. It would appear that the car saying it did or did not do this at this time is an issue. Or the defense coming up and saying, hey, my client said that he left at this time. The car clearly shows that he did that. It takes this long to get to his parents' house. The car also indicates that. I mean, come on. And also, there are certain things that do bother me. For example, sorry, I am standing so that I do not fall asleep. The defense makes a good point. Hey, when I walk near my car, it becomes alive. Is that a possibility here? Well, we didn't check that. Well, why? It's obviously a newer car that you could remote control start, that if you walked next to it, it could cause it to wake up. Why would we not investigate if that feature, like little things like that? You check to see if opening the car start awakes it and registers, but you didn't check to see if you're walking by the car, if that would do it. I feel like that seems like something that you should evaluate, but that's just me. I do agree. They should have, in my opinion, tried the financial crimes first. It is very clear, in my personal opinion, that the prosecution is playing dirty here, in my opinion. The fact that they are so heavily relying on the financial crimes without a nexus for them, or the nexus being so weak as to say that, hey, the unaliving of his wife and son bought him a 30-day reprieve from questioning at work about missing finances, which is so outlandish. It appears to me that the prosecution does not have a strong case, and so they're relying heavily on the financial crimes as a way to try to convict this man of double homicide. And I'm not a fan. Love to know this. And see, why not point that out? Also, I would like to hear more about how much of a significance and why they feel the 10 or 20 minutes is. For the sake of argument. Oh yeah, it's Hot Mess Express. I feel like it's so all over the place, and it's quite baffling. I mean, come on. We're on week 3. Now, granted, 1 week was 2 days, and then you had a full week. So 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're on day 10 of actual testimony. Real trial, not counting the voir dire process. We're on day 10. What evidence have they presented beyond a reasonable doubt that Alec Murdaugh murdered his wife and son? Now, I realize I took a week off, but I don't think that I missed. I mean, I haven't heard any evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that implicates him. Oh, I love when y'all use the fancy words. I don't see a nexus between the financial crimes and this. If he had no financial gain, and you're telling me that the motive is purely some ignorant ideology that your very serious financial crimes would dissolve because of this, which is unheard of. or that because of the double homicide, he got a 30-day reprieve from being questioned about financial crimes, it absolutely would not have gone away. That is just a shit motive. He had no financial gain that they can prove from them dying. And so, yeah, I think it's very weak nexus. I mean, they are jumping through time warps to try to make that. That's bad. It's not I guess I should have written down when I needed to go back to make the chart. So no, the boat lawsuit would not have gone away due to that.
If you bring the jury.
Your Honor, we're just copying a little bit of data, so we'll need maybe 2 or 3 more minutes.
We're going to bring the jury and let them watch you do that.
Please, God, let it get better. Those jurors are like, damn, we're so close to 5. I detect no lies in this statement. Whew. I'm getting a crustable. So their witness list consisted of 250-ish witnesses. They do not have to call all of them, so we can't be for sure or 100% certain who they will or will not call, but they had about 250 names on the list. Lord have mercy. Come on with it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to recess for the day and resume at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Please do not discuss the case.
Why didn't we just recess 15 fucking minutes ago? Well, do you have anything else we're going to talk about once the jury's out or nah? Listen, I ain't complaining because Lord have mercy. I might stand the rest of this trial the way things are going. They're done for the day. So they are breaking for the day, and we are just waiting to see if they are going to have any more words or not. Packing up, so it doesn't look like we are going to have words post this. People are leaving. Okay, so no complaints here about it ending early. I am going to go to TikTok and do a quick check-in, but I'm not going to do that until around 4. So I'm going to get off of here and start working on a chart for the members with these time slots. So yes, I'm going to get off of here. I'm going to try to get a chart done for the members with this car information and how that compares to stories and travel time and things like that. Get that up for you guys. So I'm going to get off for now and go do that. And we shall reconvene on TikTok around 4. So everybody get up and stretch and Godspeed. We've survived another day. Anywho, I will see you guys on TikTok in about 20-30 minutes. And then hopefully get this chart up for you guys for the members tonight. So love you all and see you shortly. We will reconvene on YouTube tomorrow.